This podcast is a production of Widener Law Commonwealth in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For more information, visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu/podcast.
This Veterans Day, we would like to honor the veterans of the United States Armed Forces, the brave men and women who put themselves into harm's way in order to protect our lives, our freedoms, our expectations for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Soldiers do so much more than we ever can because they put themselves into a situation where they have to be different, sometimes better than the average person. They put themselves into situations where they have to make tough ethical decisions. They have to leave their families. They are deployed, and a year later their children are all half a foot taller. This is not an easy life, but they do that so that we can enjoy our lives with our families. So today we are talking to Emily Ishler and Michael Bradley, who are members of the Public Interest Law Society, which is an organization on Widener Law Commonwealth's campus. And they do an event every year called Wills for Heroes, which helps veterans and first responders plan estates and write wills and execute trusts. We will also be talking to Michael Cooper and Tad Turczyn, who are both veterans of the United States Armed Forces and who are now second-year students at Widener Law Commonwealth. They will be talking to us about how their service has influenced their lives and influenced how they approach being a law student. And now I would like to make a special dedication to one veteran in particular, my grandfather, David Morris, who passed away this past October 16th, 2019. At the age of 77, he was a loyal husband, an excellent father, an amazing grandfather. I was so lucky to have grown up just down the street from him and got to see him every day. He was in the Air Force during Vietnam. He was a radar technician. He went to many different places around the states. He was once stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi, once in Denver, Colorado, once in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. I think I'm not the person I am today if I don't spend so much time with him. Connor, Mark, Stephanie, Professor Amanda Schultes, and I would like to extend our sincerest gratitude to members of all 5 branches of the service: the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. Our guests today are Michael Cooper, who's a veteran of the United States Army, and Tad Turczyn, who is a veteran of the Marine Corps. How are you doing, guys?
Good. Doing very well.
Yeah. I just want to kind of get a sense of your backgrounds, your times in the service, and your times out of it too, because I know you had other lives. I know, Cooper, you were in like the oil fields.
Correct. Also
for a little while. So tell us about your lives before law school. So, Coop, you want to go first?
Go ahead. Before law school, I'd worked in the oil and gas industry for roughly about a year and a half. I transitioned to that after being a stay-at-home parent for about a year and a half, after getting out of the Army for 10 years. At some point, while I was sitting in Afghanistan, I decided that I wanted to do something else with my life rather than be there in the desert. And I realized that something better wasn't just going to land on my lap, so I kind of had to make it happen. And I'd known for quite some time that I wanted to go to law school. So I left Afghanistan. My wife and I found out that she was pregnant with my first son. I postponed everything, stayed at home with them for about a year and a half, decided that I needed adult interaction again. So then I went back to work. A friend from home, got me a job. And shortly thereafter, I found out that I was home just as much as I was gone from home just as much as I previously was while I was in the military. So I came back, went to Penn State, knocked out my undergrad, and pretty much here I am.
And you did some intelligence in the military too, right?
That's correct. I was in the intelligence and special operations community.
Without giving us anything that could get you in trouble, just what was that like?
I would say that it was interesting. I actually had that question asked to me by somebody in the global counterterrorism class that I'm in, and the best way that I could analogize it is being in the intelligence community is like being on the other side of a curtain in a play that you can see all the information and you know a whole bunch of things that a whole bunch of other people don't know, and you're just kind of privy to the information. It's kind of neat, but it's also kind of scary at the same time.
How do you think your experiences in the service is helping you with that terrorism class that you're taking right now?
I think it's pretty good. It's right in line with exactly what I did in the military. So now I'm just taking my practical experience and kind of mixing the academic information in with it.
And Tad, what was your background like before you got to Widener?
I had a non-traditional kind of path. I graduated college and I didn't know what I quite wanted to do. I toyed around with law school way back then, and it just wasn't for me right then because I didn't do too well in undergrad, primarily because I like to think of it that you send an 18-year-old kid to a school 2,500 miles away from his parents who's just not mature. It's just not a formula for academic success.
So where did you go to school?
I went to Pepperdine University.
Okay.
So after I graduated from there, I moved home and I worked in the railroad for a couple of years. And I really hated it. It was just not what I wanted. My dad was a Navy officer, and he's also an attorney. So when they were restructuring my company, I worked in a cellular company.
Cellular phones?
Yeah, I was in corporate sales, and it just wasn't for me. So I called the Marine recruiter and told him my life story, and he basically was, when do you want to go? So in 98, I went to officer candidate school, finished there. I was commissioned. I went to what's called the basic school, which is a year-long class. And then from there, I went down to flight school in Pensacola, Florida. And I always told myself I'd stay in the military as long as they'd have me and as long as I'm still having fun. And as you get longer in your military career, it steadily becomes less fun because you stop doing the things that you like I used to fly jets. That's awesome. It's fun. It's great. Then as you start getting higher rank, then you start doing more staff jobs and stuff like that. So
how high of a rank did you attain?
I was a major when I retired.
Okay.
So I retired after 20 years and I decided to use my GI Bill to go to school.
And so you were in officer candidate school.
Mm-hmm.
So is that more like set up like a law school or more or less set up like an undergrad, do you think?
No, it's quite different from anything. It's officer candidate school is a 10-week program of intense training in both physical, mental, and exhaustion. So it's kind of helps out with law school a little bit because you're working with very limited sleep and stuff like that. So it's all of my military training somehow relates to life in law school. So
yeah, and so both the Army and the Marines, you've got to be very disciplined in order to make it. So do you guys carry your lessons of disciplining yourselves into law school? Like, do you wake up on a set schedule? Do you still go for runs, stuff like that? Or do you just did you translate that into your studies? Like, I'm definitely going to get this, and this done before I can go do anything else.
I think the biggest thing for me would be the use of what we call backwards planning, and it's identify a goal and then figure out what you need in a backwards order to get to that goal. And by doing that, I'm really able to properly prioritize my time. As you mentioned earlier, I have a plethora of children, so they kind of circumvent whether or not if I'm able to get up on time and go for a run or what I'm able to do. But for the most part, yeah, it's just figuring out what the goal is and working backwards from that for me.
So you know what you want, and then you work your way back in order to figure out how to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. The military training I had really does translate over. I mean, I still lived a very regimented lifestyle, but as Michael was saying too, you know, the best laid plans never survive first contact with the enemy, and the enemy right now is my 3 children who will demand all my time, so I can have this great plan laid out of what I'm going to get accomplished that weekend, and then, you know, midget football shows up for an all-day event, or softball for my daughter shows up, and, you know, it just kind of messes with your plan, but you know, you find ways to adapt too. So I can't tell you the number of times I've taken my textbooks to a sporting event with the children, and you know, between innings or between, you know, plays, I'm just sitting there trying to read and trying to take in what I can.
Yeah, one of my favorite professors from undergrad at St. Vincent, his name is Eric Koshin, and he's a former Marine, and he just drilled in, I think he said the phrase adapt and overcome no less than 10 times every class. Just drill that into our heads.
It's a popular phrase.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's really what you need to do, no matter if you are coming from a non-traditional standpoint or a traditional standpoint, is you have to just recognize that no matter what you do, it's never going to fall into place the way that you want it to. And I think that's kind of where you guys were as non-traditional students, is your life's kind of going in a way that you didn't maybe expect to be in classes still when right now.
No, I agree. It's quite different, and not challenging, but it's just different being twice the medial age of your classmates. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because when you got in here, did you feel like maybe it was harder to fit in because you were older? No, not really, because it's kind of strange. My mental age, I still feel like I'm 26, the age I was when I went into the Marine Corps, because basically for 20 years I ran around being a kid and having fun doing crazy things. But it's not difficult. It's easy to relate to people. So, you know, and to some aspect, it's a little advantageous to me, because, you know, I'm of the mindset that, you know, I'm used to working a 11, 12-hour day, and when I came to law school, I was going to continue that. This is my job, coming to school. So, you know, I told my wife and stuff that I was going to show up for class and I was going to be at school all day. Yeah. I'm not going to be, you know, like some students, they'll come in for class and they'll jet out and go do something else. So, but, you know, this is my job, and it's how I look at it. So,
and it really is. And actually, I was thinking about this today after class, is, you know, we kind of identify ourselves as law students. Like, whenever someone asks you, oh, hey, you know, it's nice to meet you, you know, the first thing that comes up is, well, I'm in law school. And it's not a braggy thing. It's just, you know, it's 12 hours a day. And, like, if you get 8 hours of sleep, which I don't normally, but, like, if you do, then you've only got, like, 16 hours that you're awake anyway. So, like, you know, a big chunk of your life is spent just getting the work done.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
Yeah. And so you both have kids?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk about just being parents in law school for a little while?
I would say that that's probably the most unpredictable aspect of my life, because children in themselves are unpredictable. I think I woke up the other morning to my 3-year-old laughing at me like the Joker from Batman. And she had found a pack of markers and colored her entire body, and then the wall, and then her bedding. So really it's just a balancing act, especially I have to rely on significant support from my wife, because if a kid is sick or something, we kind of have to juggle, okay, who's going to stay home with the kid. And sometimes that requires me to miss class. And then other times she'll go ahead and stay home. So I think at the same time, having kids kind of keeps me grounded as well, especially during finals last year. There was a lot of students walking around, and you can tell that the stress was real for them.
Yeah.
And for me, when I go back home and I see my children growing up and I see the things that they're doing, it just kind of puts me back into the mindset like, okay, law school is important, but there are still other things that are more important for me personally. So it just kind of helps me back off a little bit, really, and relax from law school, as hypocritical as that sounds when having children.
Having a family, is a great thing. It's kind of grounding to me as well. When I was coming up on my retirement, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And that's when I came up with the law school idea, because, the post 9/11 GI Bill is now transferable to your children. So I could have given them my GI Bill, but I quickly came to the conclusion that my children are so young that they're going to be much better served by me getting a better paying job now than 12 months of free school. So, my children and my family are the reason why I'm putting up with this now. And, I've been blessed my entire career that, I have my wife at home who, takes care and raises our children. And, she's done so much for our family, because there were periods of time I was gone for a long time, and even weekend trips. I remember when we were living in Hawaii, I came home from one trip and she wanted to have a mental health day, and she went on a hike and ended up falling down the mountain and breaking her ankle. And then I had to leave like a week later to go to another trip, and we had just had our youngest son, Turczyn. So she's hobbling around the house with a broken ankle while I'm off in the Philippines somewhere doing something. So I'm very lucky that, I have her there to support me. But the grounding of having a family there to support me and to know that things are taken care of is a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And I think that's also a big difference between you guys and someone like me, because I'm 24 years old. I've never been out of school. The closest thing I have to a child is a cat. And she wants attention, but it's also a cat, so I can kind of just ignore her for a little while.
Yeah, no, attention. I'll be lying in bed doing a reading for one of my classes, and my daughter will come crawling into bed next to me and just snuggle up next to me while I'm reading, and I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're reading together. Yeah,
that's basically how it goes. But then I'm really happy that Cooper brought up finals, because in my experience, I come to law school and I done okay in undergrad and I did okay in my master's, but I get here and the stakes were never so high, because I just remember the first day of orientation, Dean Hussey gave us that speech of look to your right, look to your left. One of you three is not going to be here come the spring. And I'd heard that speech before, and I was like, oh, well, that's not even going to be a big deal. And then I found out, in every law school in the country, a number of students get cut. And for me, that was the scariest thing that I had ever had to deal with, because there's just so much on the line. But you guys have been through way worse things than that. So can you just talk about how maybe your experiences in the military prepared you to kind of be more centered or calm during finals? Or maybe it didn't. And if not, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to what I was saying about goals, just as long as you remember what it is that you're trying to do, and if you go along with the notion of self-efficacy, that you tell yourself you can do something, you're more prone to actually doing that thing rather than telling yourself that you're going to fail at it. Preparing for finals was no different than most things I would say that I did in the military. It was something that I had to do, so I didn't worry about the idea of people getting cut or what if I got cut. or even doing better than the people on my left and my right. The only thing I was worried about was doing as well as I could personally do. And at the end of the day, if that resulted in me getting cut, well, then that's what it was. And I just didn't dwell on it too much. I didn't really feel any stress during finals, to be honest with you.
So you just basically saw it as, we need to get to X, and there's a straight path. As long as I follow that path, I'll be okay.
Yeah, for me, if the hardest thing that I have to do in life right now is read a bunch of books and come up with some outlines, I'm doing all right, to be honest with you.
Yeah. In any situation, there's going to be variables, and we can't anticipate all of them. And what military people learn to do is we call it compartmentalization. Something happens, we just put it in the compartment and it stays there because you have to. You can't let it come out of that compartment because it's going to affect your day-to-day job on the other side. So, for example, we're overseas in Afghanistan or something, and a rocket attack goes off, and okay, well, I heard it go off, so I'm fine. I have to put it in a compartment that, maybe one of my friends isn't there. So you just have to keep it there because you can't let that come out of that compartment because it's going to affect your day-to-day mission on that next week, next month, next year.
Yeah. So it's kind of a focus on what's in front of me, focus on the things that I can handle, and those things that I can't control, well, I'll deal with those later.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to focus on the world. It's a way to kind of keep yourself in line, and I think that's something that I and a lot of our classmates that I talked to during the first year had trouble with, was just trying to figure out how to keep ourselves in line and not go off the edge, with the thoughts of what could happen and what might happen. But I mean, I think that's something that you get not only with experience, but also with just a different perspective of growing up a little bit. All right, so we all have our struggles. And so what would you say was your biggest struggle? What did you have the most trouble with in the fall of our first year together, of our first year in law school? And would you say that you tried to fix that in the spring?
I would say for me it was just the adaptation to the new standards or the new expectations. Coming into law school, regardless of my background, it wasn't any different than it was for the rest of my peer group. Most of us had no idea what to expect. Most of us didn't know what grading would be like, what our professors would be like, so on and so forth. And I think for me, at the end of the day, it was just figuring out what standard it was that I had to adhere to and how to meet that standard. And going from last fall to this fall, well, now I know what some of my professors expect. Now I know what my finals are going to look like and what the school or even the profession might expect overall.
Yeah, and I think that's something that everyone has a trouble with because the curve is insane. If you would have, if I had a 2.3 or a 2.6 in undergrad, well, I would have freaked out. But a 2.6 here is like a B-. But you just have to reconfigure the way that you think about, you have to manage your expectations, and not only manage your expectations, but change what your expectations are. You have to change your scale of what's good and what's unacceptable.
The thing that I found most frustrating and that I continue to find frustrating is the grading method. The big test at the end is pretty much your whole grade. And the thing that also frustrates me about that is, and this directly relates to my military experience, was that the students with better grades excel at memorizing. And I understand that, to some extent, that's the only way you can really evaluate people is how well they can memorize things and get it into your brain. Yeah. But at the same time, my life experience has been that it's pointless to memorize things because you're going to have it in front of you in practice. So, for example, I have my flight manual. It's about this thick. Then I have a in-flight manual that's about this thick, and that's all our essential checklists. I don't have to memorize all those checklist items. They're there for me to reference, so I don't make a mistake. Yeah. When you're a practicing attorney, you're going to have references in front of you there's no point to memorize them.
Yeah.
So that's the aspect of me that was frustrating.
Okay. And that's still a little bit frustrating now?
It just frustrates me that that's how it
Yeah,
is,
but-
the grading method. I mean, it is what it is. You just
Yeah.
have to learn to
You
learn to play the game.
Just deal with it, yeah.
So,
Like, yes, these are the rules, these are the expectations, and I just have to abide by them.
exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that a lot of people have issues with is law school is so different than anything else. It's its own animal completely. And so people do get hung up on these little things, you know. I myself got hung up just on outlines. I was convinced there was one way to do it, and that was the only way to do it. I think that's all very relatable sort of issues that a first-year law student would have. Let's talk a little bit about extracurriculars. All right, now you're a part of the Veterans Affairs Organization at Widener.
That is correct. I am.
So what do we do with that? Because I've signed up to participate in that because my grandfather is a vet. He's actually in the VA hospital in Pittsburgh right now. And we've talked about this before, but there was a fire in St. Louis years ago, and basically my grandpa's records were burned up in that fire. And when we applied for him to get help from the VA and medical assistance, they told us that he didn't exist, that he had never been in the Air Force. So my grandma and I actually had to go through advocates. We had to do research. We did all this stuff, and we basically just had to send so many memos and requests to the VA just to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. And so that's actually why I signed up for this group. But what sort of activities do we have going on?
Well, the Veterans Organization is a fairly new club here at Widener. I believe it started the year previous to us showing up. And so as a new organization, they've been kind of limited on what they could do, but each year they've been growing their numbers, and they've been doing more and more involvement. Last year they had a couple barbecues and stuff like that, and they would volunteer and do some of the Wills for Heroes things or whatever, stuff such as that. This year they've reached another milestone where they're going to be able to start fundraising, so we're going to find some organization that we can raise funds for and donate to. The organization is open to all Widener students, not just veterans, but anyone who has any interest in veterans affairs, such as yourself with your grandfather. And it's understandable that repository fire in St. Louis, it affected a lot of people's records because all the records for everybody were stored there. So that was quite awful, and it is never a easy day anytime you have to deal with the VA, because you never know how long something's going to take.
Yeah, and I know they do their best, and that they have so many things to deal with, not only just their patients but also bureaucracies. But it's so frustrating to even. I remember we went to my grandma and I went to a town hall where the head of the VA for Western Pennsylvania came to talk to us, and they were just my grandpa was he was Vietnam, but he was always stateside, so he never left the country. He was mostly stationed in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and also in Boulder, Colorado, because he was an Army mechanic, so he didn't really need to go over. But I just remember going to that town hall, just the amount of people who were there who had problems. I mean, Fayette County is not a big place, but there was probably about 200 people in this, I think it was at the Polish Hall, but it was just stuffed to the gills of people who just needed help and just couldn't figure out how to get things done.
It's a complex system.
Yeah.
It's difficult to navigate sometimes. There's a lot of organizations out there that help you navigate the system. But the nice thing is, collecting evidence and stuff like that with the VA, it takes time, but once they arrive at the right conclusion, they do
Yeah.
make good for it, and they take care
They
of you
do.
on the backside.
They really do. I mean, once my grandma and I got everything taken care of, that was about 2 years ago. So for the last 2 years, we've had in-home service, in-home nursing. He has Parkinson's, so my grandpa's just completely immovable right now. So he's at the I don't know what you would call it, but it's like a nursing home.
Okay.
It's at Aspinwall, which is just outside of Pittsburgh, and they take the people there because they have nurses there who are both veterans and who've never been in the military, but they do such great work over there at Aspinwall, and there's so much respect and just common courtesy over there.
Mm-hmm.
They do great things for you once you can get into the system. It's just getting in that's the hard part.
Exactly.
Okay, so but if you had a time machine and you could go back to any point in your life and do something different, whether it was go to law school earlier or it was whatever, what would you do with that time machine?
Yeah, for me, I would have definitely went to law school earlier. As I said previously, I was in the Army for about 10 years. And after my first 4 years, I really just sat around telling myself that, okay, I'd get out of the Army when something better came along. And nothing better ever came along until I left the Army. So I don't regret by any means my service in the military, but I definitely would have shortened it by about 6 years and a couple of deployments, and started this process a little bit earlier. In one facet, I'm a little bit jealous of my peers that there's roughly a 10-year difference between myself and most of them. And if I could have started this earlier without maybe so many other responsibilities, I think it would have just been a different experience for me.
Yeah. How many deployments were you on?
I was on 2 combat deployments and then random other places.
Truthfully, I can't really think of anything I'd do differently. I mean, everything I've done has pointed me to where I am right now, and I'm in a really good place right now. I mean, I'm here. I'm able to use my GI Bill to go to school. I was able to retire from the military, so I mean, I have a full pension that I continue to draw for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about medical or anything like that. So in that aspect, I'm really good. I'm really well off right now on that.
All right. So let me ask you about the future then. So what do you look most forward to in the future, going into practice and everything else?
The thing I look forward to going into practice is stability in my life. I am currently in my 11th house in 20 years. It doesn't affect me because in the military, I don't know what Mike's view was, but I looked forward to moving every 3 years and finding new places and new things to explore, new cities and stuff like that. So every 2 years where I was stationed somewhere, I would start to get the itch, like, oh, it's time to move. Let's go find out where we're going next. But now your life starts to change when you get older, and when your little girl comes up to you and says, Daddy, I don't want to move again.
Yeah.
I want to stay here with my friends. That changes you a little bit. So I'm looking forward to, putting down roots and not moving again.
Were you living in central Pennsylvania before you came to Widener, or did you have to move out here?
No, when I retired, my last duty station was down in New Orleans, and I wanted to move home to Pennsylvania to go to school because I left the Commonwealth in '98, and my parents still live over in Bethlehem, and I wanted to be closer to them. I haven't been closer to them, a 10-hour car drive to them in 20 years. So that's why I chose to come here to Widener, because it's in the middle of the state. It's a good school. It's the capital, and there are a couple of military bases around here that I can continue to use those military benefits that I'm entitled to. So it's just an all-around win situation for me.
Yeah. Coop, what are you looking forward to?
Real quick though, you don't raise kids in New Orleans, by the way.
No. Oh yeah, because you're from there originally.
Yeah, I am from there.
Well, I lived on the North Shore.
That's why we didn't move to New Orleans, and we're in central Pennsylvania.
We have the 24-mile moat between us and New Orleans.
Yeah,
so.
we're in Covington. And,
yeah, we lived in Mandeville.
Okay,
so.
yeah. Never moving back. Well, 15 years. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's... I mean, hey... Now I know not to move to New Orleans.
It's a great place to go visit.
It's awesome.
Everybody should go
so
visit New
cool.
Orleans. But if you want to raise kids there, you're looking at private schools and the North Shore, like English Turn communities. And
Well, I mean, since we're on there and since it's common ground, what were both your favorite parts about New Orleans?
There's no other city in America like it, and that's the best way I think to describe it. Is you can find anything. I guess some people might say Vegas is like that with vices and indulgences, but
Vegas is fake.
Yeah,
New Orleans is authentic. It's the history.
I took my wife down there 2 years ago for the first time. We pawned our kids off on a woman that we know here, and we rented a place about a block off of Bourbon Street. Didn't get a car or anything, and she fell in love. And she's forced me to make a promise to her that we'll move there within 15 years. So my oldest one will be 18 at that point, and we can sell everything, kind of live a vagabond kind of lifestyle. And she wants to move down to the French Quarter because you can talk to anybody on the streets. There's always something going on. There's music all the time. We would go to sleep during the day when it was 150 degrees outside, wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go get beignets and a cup of coffee in the French Quarter. So it's just...
I could sit at Lafitte's blacksmith shop all day long and drink Purple Voodoo. You know?
It's great. There's no other city like it. But outside of the French Quarter, I don't know, it's pretty dirty is the best way that I could describe it.
My headquarters building was in Algiers, so it's always interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that you'll take the bar for Louisiana?
No, I don't think so. If anything, what I might do at some point is look into applying to a federal court and trying to practice within the federal courts and maybe apply for the federal district down there. But no, I don't want to go through
that would be the way to
Napoleonic
go
law
because
thing
my neighbor across the street from me, he's a PI attorney in New Orleans and in Louisiana. And Louisiana is a totally different animal with its Napoleonic code. Yeah, it's just a different legal system altogether. So it's it's not that difficult, but you would have to take some transition classes to learn for it. But I was also friends with a couple, U.S. attorneys and stuff like that, and they don't have to as long as you still have your bar. Anywhere else, it still lets you practice down there.
Yeah, federal lawyers can practice anywhere in the country.
Right. I think I've talked to you a little bit maybe about the idea of being a public defender. Yeah. Really, that's all I aspire to do is be a public defender. And when my wife and I were down there, we were looking up jobs for the public defenders. Yeah. And they're posting that they're seeking pro bono attorneys to do public defender work because the city doesn't have any funding for their public defender's office. So my wife, I was like, well, I'm not going to get paid. And she's like, we can move here anyways, but...
Well, I mean, retirement.
There's always time, so we'll get there.
Yeah, all right. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for coming in. This was really... honestly, you guys are kind of intimidating just a little bit. I mean, you're both very friendly people. Like, we know each other in real life.
I'm just a big fuzzy teddy bear.
Yeah, I know, but it's just... I don't know. It's like I feel like my life experiences compared to your guys are just like so soft.
We're just in different places in our life.
Yeah.
It's everyone's in a journey.
Yeah.
So it's just you're in a different place. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, you guys gave great interviews, and I'm very happy that you came on. And I just thank you for taking this time to sit down with me.
Sure.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Connor and I have with us also today members of the Public Interest Law Society. We have Emily Ishler and Michael Bradley. How's it going, guys?
Great.
Good,
Great. Thanks for having us.
Good to wanted to say Bagleys, but I just wanted
He'll answer to both.
Kind of close, but...
Yeah. So you are part of PILS, the Public Interest Law Society. What is that?
So we are a student-run nonpartisan group, and we try to connect students in the school who are interested in serving underrepresented communities and connect them with local organizations on campus and within the area to help them with a career after law school and kind of get more volunteer opportunities.
Okay. And one of the volunteer opportunities that you do on campus at Widener is Wills for Heroes. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So Wills for Heroes was started by an attorney after 9/11, and he noticed that a lot of the fire departments in and around New York City, a lot of the folks who passed away in 9/11 didn't have wills and estate planning documents. So he started this service that is now national, and it provides estate planning for free to first responders, to veterans. There's a whole list of different people who kind of fall under the umbrella of who the services can go toward.
Yeah, and it's students at Widener who offer these services for free with the supervision of a barred attorney, correct?
Yeah, more or less. So there's a woman, local attorney named Hannah Sir, and she is kind of the practitioner of Wills for Heroes in Central PA. So she will, every spring, bring Wills to Heroes basically to Widener. And she'll bring a handful of attorneys, usually 10 or 15, and they'll sit with the first responder, the hero, and his or her spouse, and provide a client interview, and then those people leave with all of their estate planning documents. And students get to sit in on these interviews, and they also act as witnesses for the notary. It's a cool experience because students, it's a lot of 1Ls and 2Ls who volunteer, and it kind of lines up when they're doing the estate planning portion in property, so they get to see a real-life client interview with something that they're also doing in class at the same time. I know that was something I really enjoyed from it.
Now, do you have to have a vast experience or knowledge in estate planning or wills to be able to do this?
No. The first year I did it, my 1L year, I had half a semester of property under my belt.
Yeah.
And when you're assisting the attorney, you're kind of just typing in things for them because there's a laptop with a program that they use. So you're kind of listening to the conversation the attorney's having with the client and kind of filling in all the information that they're saying. So no, not at all. And with witnessing,
Yeah,
you just need your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a great opportunity to learn about estate planning and wills and trusts and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it is. Hannah does a cool 1 hour crash course on, it's half hour of it is the computer program and another half is substantive law. So just really quick what you kind of need to know just to know what's going on. And it is a cool way. I definitely left the first year I did it with a lot more knowledge than I went in with.
Now, is this once a year?
On campus, it's always once a year. It's always in the middle of spring semester. It will be March 21st this year, which is a Saturday. It runs usually volunteers are about 10 to 5, and we do 2-hour shifts. But Hannah, every now and then, will reach out to us if she needs student volunteers anywhere in the central PA area. Last fall, we had, I think, 5 student volunteers in downtown Harrisburg for an event. And she emailed me, I know last spring, it was unfortunately during finals, for an event in Perry County. So just kind of as needed, we'll pitch in, but we do always have the event on campus in February or March.
Yeah.
Widener's been doing it for, we were trying to figure it out, but around 10 years.
Yeah.
And as each year's progressed, it's become more and more popular throughout the community,
Yeah.
which has been cool to see.
Well, yeah, and I think it's because we all recognize that there are people who go and do things that we either can't do or just don't want to do. I'm not the type of person who can run into a fire. That's just not hardwired into my brain.
Yeah.
So if I can do something to help a firefighter, protect himself in case, the worst case scenario happens and he perishes, while he's helping another family, well, then I think we all see that as our responsibility to do what we can with our skills and with our calling.
Yeah, I think that is one of the coolest things to see is a couple walk in empty-handed, usually older couple, don't have any estate planning documents, and they leave within an hour with everything that they need to move forward.
And not only as you're doing a public good, but what's the practical side of it, that you can put this on a resume, and would that look good on a resume?
Yeah, I think it totally would. It's also nice, so usually a law firm will sponsor each event. 1 year, McNeese and Wallace from downtown Harrisburg had, I think, 10 or 15 attorneys, so you get to meet attorneys in the field as well, so it is kind of a nice networking opportunity while doing something good, and it I'm sure looks great on a resume.
Yeah.
And I know with like interviews, and probably your experience too, I mean, usually whoever you're interviewing with has some connection to a veteran or a first responder. So I think I've talked about Wills for Heroes in every interview that I've had.
Yeah, it's always a good talking point. Everyone, or not everyone, but most people around here in the legal community are familiar with it, if nothing else, just from outreach to sponsor the events. So.
Now, for the event on campus, how do students sign up to participate in that?
There is a sign-up sheet on our Twin page. It should say March 21st, 2020.
Yeah.
And there's different time slots that you can sign up for. Like Michael said, you can either be the witness or assisting an attorney. And if students are notaries, because that's the one we always need.
I think you have to bring your ID card, but I always keep my ID card in my wallet. So.
Yeah.
So you're going to sign up for it then?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right now.
Yeah, I will. I will go do that, yeah.
Is there a deadline for that sign up?
No, we'll send an email out next semester. I usually just ask for a commitment at least a week out, just so we can plan and kind of know where people are going to be. We have shifts split up in 2-hour increments. So we usually ask our members to do at least 2 of the 2-hour slots, but we've never really had an issue, fortunately, with getting volunteers.
And a lot of people want to do the assisting an attorney, so we try to get as many people that opportunity as possible with rotations, just because it is the more interesting position. But you can also use those hours towards our public interest initiative that our organization has.
Okay. Now, Emily, you've done this since your first year, so this will be your third year. And Michael, will this also be your third year?
I did not participate my first year. I was out of town, so this is my second year.
Second year.
Yeah.
So, do you have any, were there any people who you met who came in for will or estate planning that left an impression on you, like a specific instance? And you don't, of course, have to say names or anything like that.
You had a cool
story. The first person I ever when I was assisting an attorney, the first person who ever came in to get a will was someone who was in their like mid-20s, early 30s, which is pretty rare for Wills for Heroes. But he had been working in D.C. as security for the Supreme Court justices, and he was specifically in charge of checking on the older Supreme Court justices every hour or so to make sure they were okay. He often was with Justice Ginsburg, which I enjoyed, but I didn't know that position existed to check to make sure that they were still thriving, but I'm glad it does.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
I know. If they need any volunteers for that position, let me know.
It probably pays well, too, if you're like a security guard for the Supreme Court.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Wow. Michael, any experiences for you?
I actually, so last year I was kind of more like doing the operations for the event, so I kind of felt like I was back managing a restaurant for a couple hours, just sending people
exactly
to all different shifts and making sure people who wanted to work with attorneys got to work with attorneys, but also making sure that the witness stand was staffed, because that's where we really need people. You have to have 2 witnesses for every document that goes through, so I was kind of trying to just balance people getting where they wanted to be with where we needed people to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time this morning.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
We really appreciate you coming in so that we can get the word out about this. And I hope you have a good rest of the semester.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone who wants to volunteer, I believe the sign-up sheet is live on our Twin page, so we can start taking volunteers whenever.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Final thought about my grandpa. He was a businessman. He owned and operated J&S Business and J&S Enterprises for over 40 years. in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, which was a company that sold and repaired office machines like printers and also cash registers. I spent many, many days in the summer in the office with him and my father, learning how to repair machines, learning how to network, how to get to know people. My Gramps also owned a grocery store in my hometown of Masontown, Pennsylvania, where he also taught me a lot about communicating with people. The thing that he taught me about interacting with people is that it is most important to be kind. You can be the smartest person, the most athletic, you can be funny, you can be handsome, you can be whatever you want to be, but if you're not kind, then it really doesn't matter. My grandpa probably lost hundreds of dollars a year on all the free ice cream that he gave to kids who were coming through the store. Because in the back of his store he had a ice cream scoop thing. There was like 8 flavors, and he never charged a child for ice cream. I learned so much from him just from his example, just by watching him live. He wasn't the type to give sage advice. He didn't have any wise words or anything like that. He was just good, and you learned from him how to be good. And I learned from him when he was sick with cancer and with Parkinson's disease, how to accept that bad things happen, but never give up hope that someday there will be good things again. The one great piece of advice that my grandpa did give me came when he was sick. And it was right after I was accepted to Widener Law Commonwealth. And I'd been living at home that year, helping to take care of him and going to school at night at St. Vincent and Latrobe. And I got into Widener, and I told him, Gramps, I'm going to be moving away. I'm going to be moving to Harrisburg because I'm going to law school. And he asked me, why would you do that? And I told him, well, I'm going to become a lawyer. I'm going to have a career. I'm going to, make money and have a good life. And he looked at me and he said, well, money's great, but nothing is better than ice cream. And that was his way of saying 2 things. First, it was his way of saying to, appreciate the little things in life, because it's the small joys that bring you the most happiness. It's the small joys that make daily life worth living. And it was also his way of asking me to bring him ice cream. He and my grandma spent the last roughly 5 months of his life at the Veterans Affairs Hospice in Aspinwall, Pennsylvania. And my family is truly grateful to the staff of the H.J. Heinz Veterans Affairs Facility and the Veterans Affairs Oakland Hospital, and the staff of Amitis, which is a company in southwestern Pennsylvania that sends physical therapists and speech therapists and occupational therapists into the home for so that homebound people can still do physical therapy. We thank you for all of the work and effort and gentle care that you gave my grandfather over the time that he was sick. We miss you, Gramps, and I'll see you in a couple decades.
Widener University Commonwealth Law School is the Pennsylvania capital's only law school, with 3 specialized centers of legal scholarship through its Law and Government Institute, Environmental Law and Sustainability Center, and Business Advising Program. Widener Law Commonwealth offers an exceptional learning experience that is personal, practical, and professional. Visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu for more information.